University tutors are being told not to dock marks for spelling mistakes because requiring good English could be seen as homogenous North European white male elite. Several universities are adopting inclusive assessments as part of an effort to narrow the attainment gap between white and black, Asian and minority ethnic students, and to reduce higher dropout rates among those from poorer backgrounds. Hull University, for example, have said that they will challenge the status quo by dropping the requirement for a high level of technical proficiency in written and spoken English in some subjects, a requirement it described as white, male and elite. Extraordinary stuff. Let's get reaction now from Chris McGovern, chairman of the Campaign for Real Education. Hello, Chris.
Hello there.
Well, where do we start with this story? First of all, why is spelling important, would you say?
Spelling is a building blocks of the language, isn't it? It allows us to communicate. And if you receive a letter from anybody and it's badly written and the spelling is incorrect, it gives you a very bad impression. So it's a building block. It's like the bricks we build a house with. We want to have the words are there and the cement is there. The cement's the punctuation. The words are are the bricks. We need to have children who can communicate. We spell correctly in order to communicate. If you go back to Shakespeare's time, there was a variety of spelling, but over time we've standardized that in order that we can have clarity. So it's about clarity, about clear communication. That's why we have spelling. If you're learning a foreign language, you learn the correct spelling. And when foreigners learn English, and I've employed a number of immigrants when I was a head teacher who were brilliant at English. In fact, they were so good at English. I got one particular girl who was from Eastern Europe to actually proofread the reports of the teachers who were native English, because they were taught this in their own countries. These days, we don't teach enough of it. So far from what's coming out of Hull University, we want more emphasis on the structure of the language, not less.
Why do you think educators have dropped the ball on spelling?
Well, it's barmy, of course, isn't it? And I think a lot of people will think it's very demeaning to suggest that correct spelling is something which white elitist males have. In fact, if you're looking at the white population, white working class are at the bottom of the pile. I cannot imagine many black parents, many parents of Indian families, children wanting to go along with this. They want their children to have a head start. They don't want them to be falling behind. It's called dumbing down. And quite frankly, these university experts, they need a bit of support and counseling. They need to understand, if you're going to help this country, if you're going to help children, particularly children from poor backgrounds, particularly white working class who are at the bottom of the pile, you can't just neglect these things and say, well, they're not important. No, the posh kids will get this. The better off kids are going to get this. You don't think middle class parents are going to say, don't worry about the spelling? Of course they're not. So we've got to help the poor. To help the poor, you give them the gift of the structure of the language. That's the first starting block almost. You teach them to read and write. Our literature levels in this country are comparatively poor. There was an investigation a few years ago on television where children went to South Korea, actually, and they gave them a maths GCSE, which the Korean kids did in 20 minutes. It was too easy for them. But they then gave them an English exam, and the Korean kids outperformed the English kids on the English exam. And that's how far behind we're falling in terms of educational standards. So dumbing down even more, it may equalize things. It may mean you get everybody getting the same low standard, but that's not a way forward. It's demeaning to poor people. And how incredibly insulting to our ethnic minorities to say that somehow they need the leg up. No, they don't. They're managing incredibly well. If anybody needs a leg up, it's the white working class.
Indeed. And tell me, in terms of spelling itself, I mean, I'm a great believer in it. I actually enjoyed spelling tests when I was at school. Some might argue that with these wonderful spell check sort of software solutions that we have now on computers and smartphones, that perhaps we don't need spelling because computers will fix it.
Yeah, that's really an interesting point, isn't it? Because what often happens, and it certainly happens with me and it happens with lots of other people, the spell check corrects a word because they think you're trying to type another word. So they correct it with an incorrect word. And if you can't spell, of course, you can't realize that the computer has corrected you with an incorrect word. So you do need to, even for a spell check, you actually need to know what is the correct word and how to spell it. We're de-skilling our population. These sorts of arguments aren't going on in other parts of the world where they're saying, oh, you can forget the spelling. It is true. English spelling is quite a challenge, but why should we take the challenge out of the lives of children? The English language is one of the richest inheritances we have in this country. Twice as many words in English as in most European languages, because it's a mixture of Latin or French Latin and Anglo-Saxon. Very rich language. Present children with a challenge. They want to be given these challenges. They want to be able to master the language. They're not wanting to have an easy time. We should stop doing this, lowering the bar all the time. No, go to the kids. I taught for 35 years. I present these arguments to kids in debate sometimes. No, they want the tough road. They want this challenge. They don't want to be given an easy ride. So these university experts need to go back into their little academic holes and rethink this, or they need counselling. They need support.
And if you get it right, children can really enjoy spelling tests, and it can be a real challenge and quite competitive among their peers.
Yeah, it's like learning your tables, isn't it? You have to do this. They're the building blocks. This is learning your tables, building maths, the blocks of addition and subtraction. So the spellings, knowing your spellings are the building blocks of the language. Some children have difficulty with spelling. We know that. And we have children who are dyslexic and say, well, of course they need support. But often, children who have difficulties with spelling have other attributes and strengths. Often dyslexic kids, for example, have great strengths in spatial awareness. So it's not all one way if you're not a good speller. But most children want to be good at, I think all children want to be good at spelling. And we all know what it's like. You get a bank statement, or you get a letter from the bank, or a letter from a lawyer, or a letter from a builder, and it's written very badly. And you think, what is this? It gives you a very bad impression. If you're going to make your way in life, you've got to create a good impression. And therefore, spelling is one of those small ways in which you can do that. But it's small, but it's important.
I wonder whether one failing is a lack of testing at schools. The fact that testing is now a 4-letter word, Chris. A major teaching union last week suggested that we should consider getting rid of GCSEs and A-levels, not having exams, but rather trusting teachers and having continuous assessment. So I wonder whether it's this phobia of testing that's part of the problem.
Well, it is. And, in the private sector where you pay £20,000, £30,000 a year, they're testing every day, every week, every month.
Because it works.
It works because children get used to it. And actually, yes, I can see why people say, well, it's a bit hard for children to be tested. But, we go to the dentist, we go to the doctors, because there's something wrong with us. We need to be tested. The children who fail the tests in the schools are the ones who benefit, because they're the ones then we know that they need help. Too many kids are going through school, not being tested. They get to 11, they get to 12, 13, and suddenly you find they can't spell, they can't add up, they can't do this, they can't do that. Well, they need to be tested. They should have been tested much earlier. Now, testing can start too young. I mean, when you're talking about 4 and 5-year-olds, it's not very reliable. By the age of about 7, it becomes quite reliable. And actually, children aren't all against testing. The other thing is when I've seen surveys which suggest many kids actually enjoy testing, and most children don't mind having a test if it's going to help them. And if you explain to children, this is so we can help you, and do lots of tests, they can be quite good fun, and the children quite like the competition. Again, it's back to these so-called experts who will say what I'm saying is old-fashioned, that I'm a heretic, that I'm a maverick. But it's true. I can teach kids. They come to me. They want to learn. When I was ahead, I had 7 applicants for each place in my school because it was a good school. It wasn't some sort of Dickensian play. They had fun. Yes, they learned because they enjoyed it because they were learning. It wasn't fun playing around the classroom. It was funny because they were learning. Kids who learn enjoy school and they make progress. Spelling is part of that. And of course, we should have retained spelling tests. And of course, we should retain the importance of spelling. We should stop the dumbing down. We need someone to get a grip on all of this. What are these universities doing? What on earth do they think they're trying to do? Remodel society so that standards don't matter anymore. This is pretty serious stuff.
Yes, and I know, certainly in my own experience, that it was the threat of tests. It was the knowledge that tests were coming that got me to open the books and begin to learn. It's just a natural incentive. And when you get it right and you do well in a test, it's highly motivating. And when you fail a test, it's a diagnostic, as you've said, that you need help. Now, the Campaign for Real Education's website is cre.org.uk, and their chairman is Chris McGovern. Chris, thanks so much for joining us. How's your spelling? 0344 499 1000. Does it matter? Do you still use your spelling? I love spelling, and I do all sorts of spelling games with my kids. Surely this is a valuable and important educational tool that we must not lose.